Beginning of Daf Yud Tes Amid Aleph, really at the top of the Amid. So, just to review one quick point, there's a Mokum Hashchita. Okay, it's called the Tabas Gedola. It's basically at the top of the trachea. It's called the Tabas Gedola. So this Tabas Gedola. So the top of the trachea is called the Tabas Gedola. It's a Machloikes Tanoim like this. Both Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda agree that the max, the highest point is the Tabas Gedola. You can't go above that. If you shecht above that, it's no good. The Machloikes Tanoim is what if I do roiv inside the Tabas Gedola and then the last third I go up. So according to the Tanakama, it's a problem because you didn't shecht it entirely in the right spot. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, Ruba Kakulei. You only have to cut roiv anyway. Once you cut, by the way, this is a big aside from today's daf. Once you cut roiv of the trachea or the esophagus, the animal is the treifa. So that's basically shchita. So once you cut roiv, rubi kekulei. There was one last shita that we mentioned in a brisa, which is Rav Chanina ben Antignis. Rav Chanina ben Antignis actually held you can shecht slightly above the Tabas Gedola in what's called the Shipu Koiva. Okay, so it's slightly above. So just to finish up this concept, and then we'll talk more in depth. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman Achsher Meshipu Koiva Mata. Rav Nachman held that you can shecht slightly above the Tabas Gedola in the Shipui Koiva, which, by the way, is the shita of Rav Chanina ben Antignis of the Brisa. So Rav Nachman is basically paskening like Rav Chanina ben Antignis. So says the Gemara, Amrli Rav Chanan bar Rav Katina Rav Nachman Keman loiker Rabbanon v'loiker Rav Yossi bar Yehuda. Your shita is not like anyone in the Mishnah, because I told you, he's following Rav Chanina ben Antignis of the Brisa, but the two Tanaim of our Mishnah feel that this is no good. So he said it's fine. They said, but you're not like our Mishnah. So instead of him saying, I paskin like the Brisa, he basically said like this, Amar le, ano le chilik yadana v'le bilik yadana. I don't know chilik, I don't know bilik, which Rashi says was just like, I don't know John, I don't know from. Like, I don't know who you're talking about. Here's what I know. I know Shmaiti Adana. I know how the Paiskim, modern day Paiskim paskin, which means I know how the Amoraim follow. In other words, you're right. I'm not like Rabbi, I'm not like the Rabbanan, I'm not like Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Who am I like? So it turns out he's like Rav Chanina ben Antignis. But his point is, who do all the Amoraim paskin like? All the Amoraim paskin like Rav Chanina ben Antignis, I'm going with them. The Gemara says, the Amar of Chia bar Rabba, Amar of Yechanan, V'amri lo Amar of Abba bar Zavda, Amar of Chanina, V'amri lo Amar of Yaakov bar Idi, Amar of Yishuv and Levi. All of these Amoraim say, they all paskin like Chanina ben Antignis, that it's kosher. Bam Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi. Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi just clarified the halachas. Again, the major machlokes tanoim in our Mishnah is if I cut roiv in the Tabas Gedola, and then the last third I go up. According to Rabbanan, no good. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, it's good. And then Chanina ben Antignis just says you can keep cutting above it. So he's the most lenient shita. The top of the trachea. Vam Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi, Murgmeris de Rabbanon. That which the Rabbanon do not permit, which is you did the last third up. Ksheir Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. He's just reiterating the shitas. According to the Rabbanon, that's no good. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is machsher because he's more lenient. But Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, Ksheir Rav Chanina ben Antignis. And that which Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda feels is a problem, Rabbi Chanina ben Antignis feels is okay. In other words, Rabbanon, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, Rav Chanina ben Antignis in the order of leniency. So the Gemara says Pshita. Okay, you're just basically reiterating our Mishnah and Brisa. Very nice. So it says the Gemara, Ma'ud same Rav Chanina ben Antignis ad Rabbanan kai. Maybe Rav Chanina ben Antignis is not being more lenient than everyone. Maybe he's only being more lenient than the Rabbanan. Kamash Malan. No. He is the most lenient shita. And how do I know the Chanina ben Antignis is the most lenient shita? Im kain heyid aleha mi baile. The Brisa should have said heyid aleha that Chanina ben Antignis testified about it. The fact that it says Chanina ben Antignis is matir implies that he's matir what everyone else asers. The hilchasa Chanina ben Antignis the Rav Nachman Kavase, and we paskin like Chanina ben Antignis because that's what the Amoraim follow. Okay, good. Now the Gemara will address the Ikar Machlokes Tanoim, which is, this is where it's going to get like super detailed. And here's the situation. You cut the majority in the Tabas Gedola, and then the last third you go up. The Rabbanan say, no good. Rav Yossi Bar Yehuda says it's fine, because Ruba Kikule. The Gemara in today's daf is going to be dealing with the following thing. What if I do the first third up, then I go the second third in the proper spot, then the third up, or vice versa. I start in the proper spot, then go out of the proper spot, then go back in. Meaning that's what the Gemara is going to be dealing with. So let's just buckle up. Oh yeah. Rav Huna bar Rav Asi. Rav Huna Rav Asi. Machloikes b'sheshachat shnei shlish. The basic machloikes is as I described before, which is you did the majority of the shechita in the proper spot, then you went up to a out of bounds area. V'higrim shlish. The Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan feel it's an issue. Why? Kula shchita be'inon b'tabas gedola, because the Rabbanan feel that you need the entire shchita to be in the proper spot. 2/3 in the proper spot, then the last third high, no good. Rav Yossi bar Yehuda savaruba kekulai, and Rav Yossi bar Yehuda says no. As long as you shecht roiv, I don't care what you do after roiv. Who cares what you do? You could stop. So what do I care if you go up? That's the basic machlekes. But higrim shlish. V'shachat shnei shlish. What about the opposite? What if you start high? You did the first third too high. Then you did the second third in the proper spot. So it's the reverse. You reversed it. Instead of doing the first 2/3 in the proper spot, then going too high, you start too high for the first third, then go down. I'll tell you what the problem is. The animal dies once you shecht roiv. So when you started too high, you started the first third was too high, no good. Then when you started cutting, when you hit roiv, the animal begins to die, and you haven't have roiv shchit in the proper spot. You see, when you cut, let's go with 51%. When you go 51% in the proper spot, then you go up. By the time you hit 51%, Rav Yossi bar Yehuda is lenient. Why? Because you already did a proper shchita. But if you do 49% in the wrong location, then you go 51% in the right location. It's the exact opposite case, but I'll tell you why it's worse. Because when you go 49% in the wrong location, then you start going down. The second you hit 2%, the animal's already dead, and the majority was shechted in the wrong location. So that reverse is l'kuli alma an issue. That's the Gemara feels. Again, you would look at it, I think if you'd ask the average person, they would say, what's the difference? You got roiv, at the end of the day, you got roiv in the right spot? Yeah. What do I care if you start with roiv, then end too high, start too high, end in the right spot? Is it nafkamina? The Gemara feels that it is a nafkamina. When you hit the halfway point, or slightly above the halfway point, the animals now cannot live. And at that moment, the majority of the shechita has been in the wrong spot. That's, you could argue. That's the argument made. The Gemara says, "Aval higrim shlish v'shachat shnei shlish diver hakol psula." Why? D'chinafka chayusa. Because when does the animal's life force leave? When you hit roiv. Be'ina ruba b'shchita v'leka. But in that ratio, by the time you hit roiv, the animal, the majority of it was slaughtered outside of the proper spot. So it's a treifa. That the Gemara feels is l'kuli alma treifa, meaning even Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is only lenient if you begin cutting in the proper spot for the first 2/3, then go up, as opposed to reversing that. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Chizda, Adarabba. Rav Chizda says, no. I think it's the opposite. Mar ipcha, you should say the opposite, which is machlokes be'ikrim shlish v'shachat shnei shlish. Maybe that's good for the machlokes. Meaning, maybe if you start too high, then go 2/3 in the proper spot, that's when there's a machlokes. But if you start in the proper spot, then go too high, maybe it's l'kuli alma okay. Meaning, listen, we know they argue, and we know there's a difference between cutting 2/3 and then going up, or starting up and then going in the proper spot for 2/3. So the first opinion said, the machlokes is when you start in the proper location, then go up. But if you go the reverse, it's l'kuli alma problem. He's saying the opposite. Why don't you say this? The machlokes is where you start too high, then go down. If you start in the proper location, it's l'kuli alma good. Meaning, they're not the same, but you're going more in the half glass empty, I'm going half glass full. The Gemara says, meaning, maybe the machlokes is as follows. You start too high for the first third, then you go to the proper spot for the second 2/3. Maybe that's the machlokes. And what's the machlokes about? Rav Yossi bar Yehuda savar, you know what the halacha is? If you have an animal that has a laceration, that half of his trachea is cut, just it was getting in a fight with another animal, half its trachea is cut. The halacha is it could survive. It's not a treifa yet, and all you got to do is just cut it like 1%, and it's kasher shchita. So says Rav Yossi bar Yehuda, that's the halacha. So says the Gemara, if the animal has a laceration where half of its trachea is cut naturally, it's kosher still. It's not a treifa yet because it's only 50%. It's not 51%. And all you got to do to be a kasher shchita is just nick 1% more, and then it's good. That's the halacha. So says the Gemara, if that's the case, then maybe Rav Yosef Bar Yehuda is leaning in this case as well, right? You cut 1/3 too high, and then you cut the next 2/3. So it's similar in that the first 1/3 that you cut, look at it as like a natural, like it was cut by another animal. And then you just finish the job. The only difference is that in my case of the animal, at least it was lacerated in the proper location. It's too high. But the Gemara says maybe there's no difference. What do I care? Oh, so the first third was cut. It has to be roiv shchita kosher. That's not true. If the animal lacerates half of it and then I just do a little bit, I didn't cut 51%, but I cut the 51st%. So you see that it doesn't matter how much you do as long as you finish. So too over here, I cut the first third, no good. And then I cut the second 2/3 good. You say, yeah, but the animal died at 51%, and at 51%, most of it was cut outside of location. Yeah, but I did the 51%. Who cares? That's the Gemara's argument. The Gemara says, and the Rabbanan respond, Hasa makom shchita, hachalav makom shchita. The Rabbanan respond, it's not the same. At least in the case of the laceration, it's in the proper spot of the shchita. Over here, it's too high. But that's when the machlokes is, when it was 1/3 too high, then 2/3 proper location. But the opposite. Avol shachat shnei shlish. But if you cut 2/3 in the proper location, then higrim shlish, then you go up, divrei hakol kshera. Maybe everyone agrees it's kosher. Why? Tatnan rube shalacha kamayim. Because all you have to do is cut roiv. By the way, the Gemara actually argues, this is a very good point. Why are the Rabbanan against it? Again, I cut 2/3, and then I go up. So the Rabbanan potentially are against it. Because you didn't cut the whole thing in the proper location. But all you got to do is cut roiv. So the Gemara argues, maybe in this case everyone's okay with it. Because the truth is, you cut roiv. All you got to do is cut roiv. The Gemara says, Amle Rav Yosef, Ma name alonta hu ruba dahasam lav Rav Yossi bar Yehuda katanila. Dilma Rav Yossi bar Yehuda katanila. The Gemara counters, you're telling me that everyone should be okay. If you cut 2/3, then go up, everyone should be okay with it. Why? Because you cut roiv in the proper location. Well, who cares what happens afterwards? You could stop cutting, so it was a nafkamina. The Gemara says maybe this whole thing that cutting roiv is enough is only according to Rav Yosef bar Yehuda, meaning maybe the Rabbanan actually believe you need. You're asking a question, which is why isn't roiv enough? Don't you just have to cut roiv? Maybe the one who says you only have to cut roiv is Rav Yosef bar Yehuda. Maybe the Rabbanan actually hold you have to cut it entirely through. So the Gemara says, Amrli Abaya Atu Kol Ruba da Amr Rav Yosef bar Yehuda. The concept of roiv was created by Rav Yosef bar Yehuda. The concept of roiv is not a halacha that's unique to shchita. It's rubai kekulai b'chol hatarakula. So why are the Rabbanim more strict here? Amrilei ana ruba de shchita kaminon de shaminali de pligi. The answer is you're right. Roiv is a thing throughout kol hatarakula, but when it comes to shchita, the concept of roiv was a creation of Yosef bar Yehuda, potentially. This back and forth that we just had. This is just like the first part of today's daf. We will now at least have a little bit of a gift, and that is there's going to be a chunk of the Gemara that is the exact same words. The only difference is that instead of the first version being Rav Chizda, this is Rav Huna. But it's literally the same words. So we're just going to read it without explaining it. Lishna achrina amrila. Some have a different version, and the only difference is the names. And that is Amr Rav Huna Amr Rav Asi. Machloik Shikim Shlish Shachat Shnei Shlish. Rav Yosef bar Yehuda Sav Midava Chatzi Pagam. Rabbanan Hasa Magam Shchita Hachla Magam Shchita. Avol Shachat Shnei Shlish Pegam Shchita Kol Sheratan Ruba Shalach Kamayu. Maskar Rav Chizda Man Lemel and Hasam Ruba Dahasam Lav Rav Yosef bar Yehuda Dilma Rav Yosef bar Yehuda Katani La Amr Rav Yosef Atu Kol Ruba Da Amr Rav Yosef bar Yehuda Katani La Amr Le Ana Ruba De Shchita Kamina De Shamina Le De Pligi. Okay, that was mamish the same words, just different names. Okay. Here's the Gemara Shaila. The Gemara Shaila is going to be like this. It's a fundamental Shaila, and that is, the animal dies, or the animal can no longer live when you cut 51% of the trachea. The second third. Right? You got the first third, 33, 33, 33. The second 33 is what takes the animal's life. Here's my question. Is that the only part that matters, or do you just need roiv shchita? I'll give you an example. I start in the proper spot, first third. Then I go out of the proper spot, second third. Then I go back into the proper spot, third third. So if you do the math, 33% proper spot, 33% out of the proper spot, 33% back to the proper spot. I have roiv in the proper spot, but the animal died when I was cutting outside of the proper spot. Or opposite, by the way. I could do wrong spot, proper spot, wrong spot, where the majority was cut wrong. But that second third, that sweet middle spot where the animal's life is taken away, I was in the proper shechita.
Yeah, but it's not a majority.
Yeah, but the question is, when Rav Yosef Bar Yehuda said you need roiv, what does roiv mean? Does roiv mean 66% in the proper spot, or does roiv mean the roiv, the majority, meaning the cutting of the majority of the pipe must be done in the proper spot? It doesn't have to be, it could be 1%. Correct. Well, halachic death. That the animal's now a treifa. I mean, the animal's no longer able to survive when you hit that 33 to 66, that middle range. So the question is that all that matters? Or no, you need roiv in the proper shechita. So the Gemara says, higrim shlish, you cut the first 33% in the bad spot. Then shachat shlish, then the middle third, I don't know how to say that properly, the middle 33% was in the proper spot. Then higrim shlish, then you go back up. So up, proper, up. So you did only 33% in the proper part of the trachea. You're like, that's not right. Yeah, but that 33% killed the animal. So the question is that what matters or not? So, Rav Huna Amar Kshera. Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rav Huna quotes Rav as saying it's kosher. Why? Because Rav Huna's version of Rav is I don't care about roiv, I care about the middle 33%. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Treifa. But Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says no, I need roiv. I don't need 33%, I need 66%. So according to Rabbi Yehuda Merav, it's a problem. Now that, again, the machlekes is bad, good, bad. Bad, good, bad. What about the opposite? Good, bad, good. Meaning, I did the first 33% in the proper spot, then I went up for the middle 33, and then I went down proper spot for the second 33. So it should be a reverse halacha. Meaning, Rav Huna, who believes that all that matters is the middle third, this middle third is in the wrong location, and it should be a treifa. Rav Yehuda Merav, who says that all that matters is the majority, over here you have the majority kosher. I don't care that it's the middle third. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna Merav Kshera. The first case, which is bad, good, bad, the Gemara says, Rav Huna quotes Rav as saying it's kosher. Why? Ki nafka chiyusa, I only cut 33%. Yeah, but when does the animal die? In the middle 33%. B'shchita kanafka. The animal's life force left him when I was shechting the proper spot. Rav Yehuda Merav Treifa. Rav Yehuda Merav says that it's a treifa. Why? Being a ruba b'shchita v'leka. Because you need to cut roiva the shchita, and you don't have that. Now that's bad, good, bad. So you only cut 33% of the trachea, you just happen to cut the main 33%. What about the opposite? So this is a machlekes Rav Huna quoting Rav and Rav Yehuda quoting Rav. So now they ask the opposite. Shachat shlish, good. V'higrim shlish, bad. V'shachat shlish, good. So good, bad, good. So you have the majority of shchita you did in the trachea, but that middle 33%, like the danger zone, that was out of the spot. So, Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Kshera. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav kosher, because it's the opposite reverse. Meaning the first case he said treifa, now he said kosher. He's consistent, which is he just cares about statistical 66%. Well, the question is that you need roiv shchita. So the question is, what does roiv mean? Rubik Kekule. The question is, what does roiv mean? Does roiv mean the 66% of the shchita or the 66th percentile? That's that point. That's the nekuda. So Rav Yehuda Amar Rav is now consistent, but first he's treif and now he's kosher. Now, if you remember the first version, the one who argues with Rav Yehuda quoting Rav was Rav Huna. So now they asked Rav Huna, Asa Shayla Rav Huna, Amar le treif. Rav Huna is also consistent with his view, and he says treif. Now, by the way, notice, though, he's not quoting Rav in this case. Rav Huna is now saying, listen, I didn't hear Rav about the second case, I didn't hear Rav. I'm telling you it's treif, but he's consistent. Rav Huna just cares about the middle third. He doesn't care about 66 percentile. So over here, where it's good, the bad is in the middle, treif. Rav Huna is consistent. They're both consistent. So the Gemara says, Shamar Rav Yehuda ikbid. Rav Yehuda got frustrated with Rav Huna. Why? He says, Amar treifu machsher treifa. Well, everything I say he argues with. I said treif, he says kosher. I said kosher, he says treif. I mean, he's consistent, but he's getting frustrated with Rav Huna. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna actually wanted to reverse his opinion. He felt bad. So Amar Rav Huna says, Shapir kamikbid. He's right to get frustrated. Why? Meaning, I want to retract my statement for two reasons. First of all, so he says, at least in the first time, we were arguing about what we heard from Rav. This is just me talking. Rav Huna is like saying, I'm just telling you I think it's a problem. Consistently, I think it's a problem. Secondly, he says, secondly, over here, this is a big chiddush of what Rav Huna is saying. Why? Again, you did 33% in the proper location, 33% bad location, 33% in the proper location. So you did cut in the trachea 66%. Rav Huna still says it's treif. Why? Because he goes to that middle. Rav Huna says, I get what I'm saying is a chiddush, because at the end of the day, you had roiv shchita. So he wanted to retract his statement. So the Gemara says, Amar li Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says, Loi tehadabach. You can't retract your statement. Why? Go to the next page. I'll say it outside, I'll say it inside. He says, basically, you can't retract one statement because then you'll have to retract both. Because you're consistent in your view. Your view is consistent, and that is that the majority shchita that's needed is not 66 of 100%. It's the 33 to 66. That middle is all that matters, and you're being consistent. So if you retract statement 2, you then also have to retract statement 1. There's no option of just having one of the two statements, because you're consistent. So said Rav Chizda to Rav Huna, Im Kain, if you want to retract your second statement, you have to retract your first statement as well. Why? Because you're being consistent in your view. So there's no option of, you're being consistent. So basically, keep going at it. Okay, now what we're going to do is basically, till the Mishnah. Okay, not too bad. The hard part is done. Now the Gemara just talks more about these cases. Who do we paskin like? Ikla Rav Nachman l'Sura. Rav Nachman went to Surah. Boimina, they asked him, Shachat Shlish, first third is good. Higram Shlish, then the second third no good. But Shachat Shlish, third is good. So mamish our discussion. We had Rav Yehuda Amarav and Rav Huna Amarav. So he said Rav Yehuda Amarav and Rav Huna. It was a machlekes. So what's the halacha? Amarlu Lav Hainu de Rav Elazar ben Yumi. De Rav Elazar ben Yumi Shchita Asuya Kimasarik Shera. He says, didn't Rav Elazar ben Yumi say that if you cut a jagged shchita, like a zigzag, it's a problem? Well, this is a zigzag, right? Good, bad, good. So it's a zigzag. Didn't Rav he says it's kosher. I'm sorry, Rav Elazar ben Yumi said zigzag is kosher. Isn't this a zigzag? So Gemara says no. Rav Elazar ben Yumi was actually talking about within the makam shchita itself. Not where you left the makam shchita. Let's say the makam shchita is these 2 inches. You did a zigzag in that shchita. That's when he says it's kosher. But in your case, where you actually leave the makam shchita, Kenzan, it's a problem. The Gemara says, Dilma makam shchita. No, Rav Elazar ben Yumi was only talking about a zigzag within the makam shchita. So says the Gemara, makam shchita, my remember. So what's the chiddush? Who cares if you did a zigzag? So the Gemara says, Ma'od, the same would be nishchita mufras v'leka. You might think that within the makam shchita, it has to be a straight cut. Kamash Malan, within the makam shchita, you can carve it. But we're talking about where you left the makam shchita for the middle part, that he never addressed. So we don't know what he would say. Just to finish up this discussion, Yasser of Abba Achayr Rav Kahana, Yasser of Kahana Kamed Rav Yehuda, Yasser of Kamar. This is the Rav Yehuda that we had before. Shachat Shlish, V'Higram Shlish, V'Shachat Shlish. Good, bad, good. So you have 66% in the good, but you don't have that middle. Amar Le Shchitaso Kshera. Rav Yehuda said it's kosher because if you remember, Rav Yehuda quoted Rav before that says that all that matters is the middle, is the 66 of the 100 percentile. Not the middle, 66, Roiv. Rav had Roiv. What about the opposite? Higram Shlish, V'Shachat Shlish, V'Higram Shlish. Bad, good, bad. So you only caught 33% of the Makam Shchita. It was the integral 33%, but it was only 33%. Amarle Shchitas Psula. Again, puzzle, because he's consistent that he's looking for majority of the act. Now here's the Gemara's question. Shachat b'makam nekev. Okay. Think of this as a neck. Okay. So you have, not bad actually. So this is the neck. And, by the way, for those that are listening, it's not great what I'm doing. Point is, there's a hole. Already there was a hole, a laceration. I told you before that if the animal's half lacerated, you just cut, you put the knife through the laceration and just continue the cut. It's kosher. So this is where it's from. Shacha b'makom nekev. You have a hole in the trachea. Let's say 50% hole. You put the knife through the hole and just continue cutting. What does it make it? 51% treifa, not 50. So it's 50% lacerated, and you just take the knife and put it through the laceration and keep going. Mahu, it's kosher. Here's the question though. What if the laceration is in the back of the trachea? So it's the exact same case, but instead of me putting the knife through and continuing, I'm cutting and then I get to the laceration. What's the difference? Right? There should be no difference. I think my father's right, and the Gemara's conclusion is like my father, that what's the difference? when you cut, if there's a hole there and then you cut through the hole and then make it to 51%, the reason why it's kosher is because I don't care what happened before, I care what you did. You did the 51%, you're fine. If the hole is in the back and then I cut from the front, get to the hole, it's the exact same thing. Like, what's the difference? And that's the Gemara's conclusion, is what's the difference. But the Gemara first deals is the difference. The second case is puzzle. There is a difference, says Rabbi Yehuda, of whether you cut in the hole and continue, or you cut outside of the hole and reach the hole. So the Gemara says, Azo Rav Abba Kameder Rav Elazar, Azo Rav Elazar Kameder Rav Yochanan, Amar Lei, what's the difference? Meaning, I don't know what's the difference. So Amar Lei, well, Shacha b'makom negev nasa kamisha shacha oivikachav v'gamar Yisrael. Shacha d'pagam negev nasa kamisha shacha Yisrael v'gamar oivikachav. The Gemara says, for some reason, he looks at this hole that was done naturally by another animal as if it was shechted by a guy. So, if the first case where the Jew puts the knife through the hole and continues cutting, it's as if the Jew did the entire Ma'aseh Shechita. But in the other case where you're cutting and you reach the hole and then you stop, if the hole was done by look at the hole as if it was done by a guy, it's as if the Jew did the first part of the Shechita and then the guy finished it. Well, no, that's a problem. If you take a knife, you cut 50% and then a guy takes the knife and cuts the rest, that's a problem. For some reason, the Gemara is looking at it as a natural laceration. It's as if a guy did it.
How do we get to it? Like,
Which case? Oh, so you're cutting and then you just get to the hole and stop. Oh, an animal? I don't know. The animal scratched him from the back, whatever. So the point is, so the Gemara looks at it as the natural laceration as if it was done by a guy. So yeah, if it's done by a guy, so if you're cutting and then you get to the hole and then you stop, it's as if you did the first shechita and then the guy finished it.
Yeah, but it has to be a natural.
Yeah, obviously.
It has to be natural.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be natural. It just can't be. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a bad Ma'aseh Shechita. I think it has to be natural. I guess we'll see it. Well, yeah, we're looking as if it's a guy. I'm saying we're looking the natural as if it's a guy. So the Gemara responds, Kari Alel, Rav Yechon hears this, he says, guy. What does that mean? So Rashi says he wasn't calling Rav Elazar a guy. He was saying, you could say guy all day long, it's not going to explain what you're saying. What do I mean? He says to him, Amar Rava, Shapir Kari Alel, Rav Yechon. Bishlei Mahasam, Midahavali Yisrael Lemishcha Ruba V'Loi Shacha, Kenafka Chiyusa, but the other, they become Kenafka. In the case of the guy, I cut 50% and I can continue cutting and I stop and I hand the knife to a guy and the guy cuts the rest. So there's two people that are sheichtim and the one that did the main part was a guy. That's a problem. But in this case, over here there's no other person. It's a natural laceration. There's no other Ma'aseh Shechita. I'm the only one doing it. I'm doing what I can do. There's no other guy here. I don't know what you're talking about. So the whole premise that a natural laceration is kilu shechta by a guy. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's just finish up the daf. I said before that they look at it as if a guy. They look at it as a natural laceration is worse than like cutting 51 and stopping, because over here it's done partially not by you. They look at it as mamish like a guy did it. And to that, Rabbi Yechon responds, well, shech is a guy. A guy is worse because that's a separate Ma'aseh Shechita. Over here, you did everything you could do and you did the roiv. I don't see what the problem is. The Gemara says, Hasheichim min atzdadim. Again, I'm going to use, you know what? I'll use this. I'll use because our Chassidim are makbid. Rabbi Bergman used to tell me not to mark it on your neck. I don't know if it's like a heebie-jeebie stuff, so I'll try not to. But, so this is the neck. Okay, this tissue box is the neck. Sheikh, right, you normally just take the knife and cut the front. I cut the sides. So in other words, I take a knife and I cut like that. I start on the side of the neck of the animal. That's kosher. She does a ksherer. Now the reason why, you say, why would that be a problem? There is a concern, there's a bone in the back. You don't want to hit the bone. So the concern is if you start on the side, maybe you'll nick the bone. Kamash malon. If you don't touch the bone, you don't touch the bone. It's fine. Basically, the premise of the Mishnah and a little bit of the Gemara, we'll be done in 5 minutes. The basic premise is Shechita and Malika are not in the same spot. Shechita is in the front of the neck, and Malika is through the bone. They would take the bird and you put your nail through the back of the neck. It is the exact opposite. Meaning, if you do a Shechita where the Malika is no good, and you do a Malika where the Shechita is no good. They're two opposite concepts. So you shech from the front or from the side, you do Malika from the back. Zak the Mishnah, if you do Malika from the sides, Malika se psulai. It's not good. Hashoichem min ha'oirif, if you shecht through the back of the neck, through the bone, so that's no good, because the second you sever the spinal cord, it's already a treifa before you get to the esophagus and the trachea. So if you cut through the spinal cord, that's a problem. Shchitas psula, but hamoilik min ha'oirif, but if you do malika through the spinal cord, malikas kshera, it's kosher. Hashoichem min tzavar, if you shech from the front, shchitas kshera, that's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to shech from the throat. But hamoilik min tzavar, but if you do malika from the throat, malikas psula. In other words, shekala oirif kashel malika, chala tzavar kashel shchita. The oirif, which we're going to define as a moment, the oirif is the neck. The back of the neck. The back of the neck is the proper spot for malika, and it is not the proper spot for shchita. Nimsa, kosher b'shchita, pasal malika, kosher malika, pasal b'shchita. In other words, what's kosher for malika is going to be pasal by shchita, and vice versa. Let's just finish up the daf. My oirif. We said in the Mishnah that the proper spot for malika is the oirif. Now we translate the oirif as the back of the neck. Says the Gemara, my oirif, what does the word oirif mean? Ilay ma oirif mamish. The problem is, oirif actually in Tanakh is not the back of the neck. Oirif is actually behind the eyes, right? The eyes, if you were to go make a line directly around the eyes, basically where the kesher of the tefillin is, that's the actual oirif. It's above the neck. It's the back of the skull. So it says the Gemara, my oirif, ilay ma oirif mamish. You're supposed to do malika on the back of the skull? I thought you were supposed to do it in the neck. My area shaykh, I feel the meilik nami mimul arpay amrachman. Doesn't the pasuk say that it's bimul arpay, which means below the oirif? So why does the Mishnah say that the oirif is kosher from malika? It's not. It's below the oirif. Below arpay. Elamai oirif mimul arpay. So that's what the Mishnah means when it says oirif. It means mul arpay. It means below that part, i.e., the back of the neck. Again, the oirif is the top of the skull, back of the skull. Mul arpay is below that. Keditani kash seifa kol oirif kashel malicha. Now, mimol arpay, minani mili, how do I know that that's where the malika is done? Which is, again, it's below the oirif. The Tan Rabbanan, mimol arpay. Mul haroya esa oirif. Mul means the part that views the oirif, meaning slightly below the oirif. The oirif, again, is opposite the eyes, the back of the neck, the back of the skull, and mul arpay is below that. V'cheinu oimer, v'hu yoshef mimuli, as the pasuk says, mimuli, within view of me. V'oimer ki panu alai oirif v'loi panim. And the pasuk also says that Klal Yisrael turned their back to Hashem. Panu alai oirif, that they showed the oirif to Hashem, that they turned away from Hashem. My va'omer, what do I need this pasuk for? Ki tema oirif gufa lo yadana hecha, denei demul didei hecha, tashma ki panu alai oirif lo panim mechlal de oirif lade panim. The evolution is as follows: mul arpay means below the oirif. What is the oirif? The answer is the pasuk says panu alai oirif, that Klal Yisrael turned their back to Hashem. That means we turn the back of our heads to Hashem. So I know oirif is here, by the back of the skull, the top of the back of the skull, and then mul arpay is below that. Just to finish up, Amri b'nei Rav Chia, mitzvahs malika, machzir simanim la'achari ha'oirif u'malik. Very interesting. Most people would assume that oirif, the malika, is you just take the nail and go through the back of the neck, sever the spinal cord, then sever the trachea and the esophagus. He says what you do is you take the esophagus and trachea, pull them to the back of the neck, and then do the malika, so you don't actually sever the spinal cord. You're just severing the trachea and the esophagus in the back of the neck. So says the Gemara, wait a minute. Two versions of what he said. Is he saying you have to do this? That's the proper malika, or you can do this? So says the Gemara, Ikad Amri af machzer. Some say he didn't mean that you have to do this. He's saying you could do this. That is a proper malika. But some say, no. You have to do this. That is the way malika is meant to be done. And the Gemara ends off with this. Mistabra kemanda amar af machzer. I'll prove it to you that is not the proper form of malika that must be done. It can be done, but that's not how malika must be done. I'll prove it to you. Why? What did the Mishnah say? If you shecht an animal, the same spot of the malika, it's no good. Now, if your malika is moving the spinal cord into this, then why is shechita no good? So says the Gemara, we'll end with this. And if that's the formal way of malika, which is taking the esophagus and moving into the back of the neck, my area moilik, then why is shechita no good? The answer is you can do this, but the standard malika is through the nape of the neck, through the spinal cord, hence shechita in that form would be a problem.